What is up, RotoGrinders? I am your host, TJ Zwarych, here for some FanDuel Friday football edition. We got our NBA FanDuel Friday show already up, so make sure you check that out on YouTube. Check it out on the RotoGrinders page. Hit the like button if you're watching it on YouTube. And we're going through that one, and in classic fashion, we got Anthony Davis downgraded to questionable right after we're done. But the way we run the FanDuel Friday show for basketball, we talk mostly strategy, and then we're going to answer your questions on that page throughout the day as the day goes on. So never fear, still useful content, and we'll answer any questions you have in the comment section. But it's time to talk some football, and I'm here with my friend Andre Alford, Drizzy26. How you doing, man?
I am doing pretty good. I am actually really excited about this NFL slate. This is, I think, one of the better ones. I feel like it's pretty straightforward. Might be taking some hard stance, not sure yet, but I'm interested in talking to you about it and breaking it down and maybe seeing if you can change my mind about some players.
I agree with you that it's pretty straightforward, and the interesting thing here is that it seems pretty straightforward for us, but we're not really seeing all that much more concentrated ownership than we typically would on a slate. It looks still pretty darn similar, but the reason it's straightforward on this one is because Lamar Jackson is on bye as well, alongside a couple other top QBs. And then we also have Josh Allen is questionable. Kyler Murray, questionable. And I believe we have one other, and Matthew Stafford, questionable as well. And so it's an interesting week from we don't know if we're going to have some of these top tier QBs playing. And we have concentrated ownership going to Patrick Mahomes and Justin Fields. Fields, a top play over on the other side. He's priced up a bit more here on FanDuel, but still a great play. And then you have Patrick Mahomes as projecting as the top play on the slate. He's probably going to be up over 20% in single entry, large dollar stuff. How are you wanting to handle stacks and the quarterback position optimally, and then in tournaments as well?
Optimally, I feel like you probably want to get as much Justin Fields as you possibly can in this matchup against Detroit. The third highest total on the slate. The way they have changed their offense now to help Justin Fields out has been really, really, really significant over the past couple of weeks. And he's been at least a QB 1 or 2 since for the past, I think, 2 to 3 weeks. So I don't know what that offense. I mean, I guess the coaching staff finally decided let's just let him loose, let him play his game. And then they got him some help with Chase Claypool, and then he'll be more integrated into the offense. So I love Justin Fields, so that I think that he should be like the optimal quarterback in my opinion. In this matchup against Detroit, and loving this pass catcher. So and the running game, but we can talk about we'll get into that more when we talk about the strategy of it all. But definitely like Fields, Mooney, Claypool's optimally, but tournament wise, obviously you can still get him in tournaments. But tournament wise, I really right now, yeah, you see this is my player pool here that we got up right now. I'm really more focused on going with like Patrick Mahomes and Tua Tagovailoa, just because I know that the pass catchers are there, and also you get different with them for sure in tournaments. So that's where I'm going to use my leverage a little bit and see where it goes from there. There's a lot of other options too that you can look at, or some other options I think you can look at, but I just am worried about the ceiling of those guys in their matchups.
First place we disagree is kind of from an optimal cash standpoint. I think I'd rather Mahomes over Fields on FanDuel, where the price is so close, only $200. He's projected for 3 more points on the blitz. He's projected for 4 more points on the RG premium. I think in that setting, I would go Mahomes over Fields, and I do actually like him a touch better in tournaments as well, just because I love Kelsey today. There's lots of different ways I can stack this. I think somebody like a Valdez-Scantling is one of the better receiving value options on this slate today. And so Mahomes is going to be my number 1, Fields number 2, and then my favorite pivot for tournaments is not going to be super low owned, but it's Tua. Yeah. Tua Tagovailoa against this Cleveland team. Yes, they have a good pass rush, but they also can give up a lot of points, give up a lot of yards. So I'm kind of torn if I don't know how many lineups I'm gonna run yet, but if I were running a main tournament lineup, I'm not sure yet if I would have Tua and do a full Dolphin stack, or if I just want to make sure I get Tyreek Hill into that lineup, because I think he's kind of the priority spend up on this slate. Outside of those guys, Kyler Murray's interesting if he plays. Daniel Jones is somewhat interesting. Goff, I think, is all right. But I think the next two places I want to go for tournaments would be Dak Prescott in a full Dallas stack against Green Bay, and or Trevor Lawrence in a full Jacksonville stack up against KC on this other side. Maybe I want to play just Travis Kelce and then run it back with Trevor Lawrence, some Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and then I got a lot of salary left to do whatever I want with the rest of my lineup. So that's a build I like quite a bit as well. But I think it's a pretty condensed pool. It's Mahomes and Fields as the top options. For me, it goes Mahomes, then Fields, then Tua. And then I'm looking at Dak and Trevor Lawrence as my favorite low-owned tournament options.
I can definitely agree with you when it comes to the Trevor Lawrence thing. I like him a lot. I really do. Especially against the KC secondary. I think he can definitely have a good day against them. They give him some yardage and give him some points. So I like that from a standpoint. Dak, I understand the Dak play too in a way, but Green Bay still has a good defense. And I think that game's also going to be a slower paced game. So I'm not as high on Dak, but I get it, and his receiving options are great. And he's starting to get into that rhythm and find the fluidity with them, so he'll be able to target them and possibly have a big game. So I don't mind those plays at all. But if anyone I would be going to more than that is, like you said, it's Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is a phenomenal option here. It just makes the most sense to me as far as from a low standpoint, because it's that high total game. Travis Etienne obviously is going to be the main run back with it, or you can run him in stacks with Christian Kirk or with Marvin Jones as well. So I think that's what I would be looking to a lot of. And you mentioned Tua. Obviously, we know what Tua brings to the table with Waddle and Tyreek. So that and also having the tight end there of Gesicki, who will be low owned too, I think helps a lot, and you can use that in tournaments as well. So those are the main guys I would be looking at. I don't mind a Daniel Jones. Yeah, how do you feel about Daniel Jones? Like with that matchup against Houston, like I know like their secondary is really not that great. They do play well sometimes, but not all the time. As we saw a couple last week they played pretty decently well, or a week before that. But in this matchup against the Giants, where Daniel Jones obviously has the ability to run as well and pass the ball a little bit.
I'm never a fan of running quarterbacks naked unless like if it's Fields or it's Fields or it's Lamar. Sure, just because their rushing upside is kind of on a different level from guys like a Daniel Jones. But if I was running 150, I would definitely be including some stacks where I play Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, hell, maybe even Kenny Galladay if he plays alongside Daniel Jones, like in 150 max stuff. But in single entry, 3 entry, even 10 entries, I don't think I'd be getting to him today.
Okay. Completely understand that. Makes sense. So what are your thoughts then on in the reason obviously I got Jared Goff in here too. How do you feel about Jared Goff this week? He's had some success against Chicago last year. It was at that price, he could be pretty valuable.
Very, very similarly as I do about Daniel Jones.
Uh-huh.
If I was running 150, I would definitely be over the field on that 2% Jared Goff. I'd probably have 5, 6, 7% Jared Goff, same as I would Daniel Jones. But in one lineup, 3 lineups, 10 lineups, I don't think I'm going to get there. I would rather just play Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, because he's going to be targeted heavily, and I think this is a perfect matchup for him to bounce back from his. I think he's had like 2 disappointing weeks in a row, but I think this is a bounce back spot where he can blow up here for sure. But we'll get to that when we do. So yeah, and I get why we also are different when it comes to the tournament aspect. But the reason why I say that because we know I think the receivers for Chicago will be more popular and more. It would be more of a cascade play versus the KC receivers where you don't know who they're going to target. You know,
Yeah, that's if I'm playing Mahomes in cash, I'm definitely paying up for Travis Kelce too.
we know that Kelsey's a must, but then but typically we want to double stack, right? And especially in tournaments. So we got Tony, you got MVS, and then you have Juju. At least those are the main three. Then you got Hardman as well, who could do something as well. So that's four other options that you have to figure out who you want to pair and cycle through with Travis Kelce, which I think makes it kind of a little bit harder to figure out.
It does. Exactly. I agree with that 100%. It definitely makes it a lot more tempting to go to somebody like Tua Tagovailoa, where I just know I can, if I'm not feeling very risky, if it's a small field, I'll just play him with a Waddle and Hill. I know I'm probably going to get 15 to 20 points minimum from each of them. And then if I am doing some larger field, that's where you can throw in somebody like a Mike Gesicki. But I also think that's what makes Trevor Lawrence so interesting is you just play Travis Kelce, the guy you know the ball's going to go to in that KC side, and then you run it back with Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne, maybe even Marvin Jones in there a little bit. But I think even though I usually like still talking stacks, going receivers next, I think let's swap it to running back next because I got a real small pool here. And I don't think it's going to take us that long to talk about it.
Well, yeah, I'm interested in seeing your small pool because I have probably like 14, 15 running backs. I'm trying to get a little bit less, but I feel like all these guys are in great spots.
So I see Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne as the guys over 8K that I'm looking at and I'm most interested in. Mm-hmm. Of that group, if I'm talking optimally, I think the two that I'm most interested in would be Travis Etienne and Josh Jacobs. I think I'd want to save that little bit of, and Dameon Pierce, who's just a little bit cheaper. Mm-hmm. Those would be the three running backs I'd be looking at in an optimal lineup. But those top guys I would want to get to in tournaments as well. I just think it is kind of tough to pay for Henry Barkley. The person I'd want to get most over the field on would be Nick Chubb. I don't really understand this blitz projection with him right now. I understand he's had a lot of positive touchdown variance. We're expecting some negative regression there, but Nick Chubb is just a beast. And I think if he's going to be sub 10% owned and we're going to be pushing 20 on Barkley and Henry, I would just swap that. I'd be pushing 10 on, I'd get 10 Barkley, 10 Henry, and I'd get 20 Nick Chubb if I'm running 150. Yeah, Kamara, I think is incredibly interesting for tournaments. Like he's one of my favorite tournament running backs on the board. And then of that, like, so we've talked about Dameon Pierce and up. Like that's my group. I like Pierce, Etienne, Jacobs, Kamara, Chubb, Henry Barkley, and Henry Barkley are the ones I like the least of that crew. Uh-huh. But then from there, really the only other ones I'm interested in is Dalvin Cook specifically if Josh Allen does not play. But even so, I don't really think I want to get to him that much. There's two other backs I like a lot and one that I maybe will. It's Tony Pollard, who Ezekiel Elliott's questionable right now. If Zeke is out, Pollard becomes my favorite running back on the slate. And then in tournaments, the two guys I'm looking to get to are Jonathan Taylor at 7K. He's been practicing all week. I think he's going to play. And Devin Singletary at 5.6.
Yeah, let me put Jonathan Taylor back in this player pool because I think earlier in the week he wasn't there because we weren't sure if he was going to play. But Jonathan Taylor, man, this guy right here, he's too cheap for his price for what we know.
And it's Vegas.
But the thing about it is he's been hurt so much with this ankle. Like the ankle, he's been practicing full participant practice, but then on game day he goes out and hurts his ankle again. Like that's the one thing that I am afraid of happening. I would be at the field with him. I wouldn't even try to get overweight because that's my biggest concern with him is how stable is he going to be on that ankle? How reliable he's going to be on that ankle? So like he's a great play in general, but I would get like different in tournaments. You mentioned Aaron Jones, he had an ankle too, but I guess he's fine. That's perfect. But I like Jamal Williams getting up a little bit more, 7.4K. I know it's pricey, but just to be a little bit different in tournaments, I think he's a player that can be really really great. Um, Dalvin Cook is another one that we talked about here. Um, I liked what you said about it with Josh Allen, but I don't even think Josh Allen's going to play.
I
Um,
don't either.
like
And so, like, if that is the case, then I like Dalvin. It's just like if he miraculously somehow goes, then I'm a lot less interested in Dalvin and a lot less interested in. Actually, no, I would still
I
have
would
my
prefer,
interest in Singletary. I'd be more interested in Singletary because his ownership would go down and they'd probably lean on the run.
yeah, and at that point, and then that goes back to the quarterback things a little bit in a way because I might want to play Kirk Cousins because I think that could be. It won't be a shootout, but I think Kirk Cousins can have a field day against that secondary, especially with Justin Jefferson. But I, I like the call with Dalvin Cook. I think that's a great call, phenomenal call. I like sticking in that mid range, like you said, like Pierce, ETN, Josh Jacobs. Those that's a sweet spot right there. Anything higher, like honestly, Saquon. I might be like in tournaments. I would be tempted to let Saquon and Derrick Henry beat me on the slate. I think that
I think I'd be tempted to let Saquon go, but I don't know if I would let Henry go.
because Henry has a more
Just
probability of doing it.
and it just we've seen November, December Henry, what he's done in the past. And then you look at these last few games for him, and now they have Tannehill back now, but they're still probably going to be leaning on Henry. 17 carries, 115 yards, two
Yeah,
touchdowns. 32 carries, 219 yards, two
oh,
touchdowns.
goodness.
30 carries, 128. Like when you're just getting that usage, it's tough not to like a guy. Now,
That is a tough one.
Barkley will get usage as well, but he's not like he's reached 30 carries once this year, but other than that, he's never been above 25. He's only had that one big explosion game this year where Henry's had a few more of them. I'd rather take shots on Chubb and Kamara at lower ownership.
Yeah,
But then Henry, the ceiling is just too high for me to ever fade entirely.
I get that, and I completely probably agree with that because we've seen Henry just take over slates, even though we don't think he will. So I don't mind that at all, for sure. The lower end of running backs, I think like this is where since we were talking about like my favorite quarterback was Justin Fields. He's gonna be very popular. I think a way that we can use to get different is what if we go with a game script, say what if Justin Fields comes back down to earth and doesn't have a good game? Then it's gonna be the running backs that are gonna have the good game. So a guy like David Montgomery, I think, is someone we have to think about playing. And I would play him only in lineups that don't have Justin Fields. I would not stack the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver for this specific side of the ball.
I'm with you there. I wouldn't either. My biggest issue with Montgomery is like he hasn't had over 15 carries
Yeah,
in forever. Like Herbert's really good and Herbert plays. And
true.
so who scores the touchdowns? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Even if Montgomery drives them down the field, it could be Herbert who hops in there. So that's kind of my issue with Wilson and Mostert as well.
yeah, that's the one thing.
Is
I love them too today. They're in a great spot, but I literally looked this up. That first game they had, it was 50. It was literally 50-50.
yeah. And that's why it's so interesting to go with just like Mahomes, Pierce, Etienne, and Jacobs as your
Yeah,
main guys because they're getting the carries. Those are the guys. And it adds a good amount of stability to your lineup of no, they're not for sure going to be successful, but there's a pretty good chance that they are.
exactly, and I completely agree with that. I just feel like, and this is why my player pool is like this when it comes to this specific position. The run these are very volatile situations, but they also are in high game totals. All three of them, Mostert, Wilson, and Montgomery, probably the highest on the slate. Granted, we pay up a little bit. We get a little bit more. We get a little bit more of the same thing when it comes to like Jamal Williams on the opposite side of the game, ETN as well. But I just feel like this can they have that upside. Well, they have the upside I feel like as far as those guys, but on smaller, but on a smaller level, it's not highly likely, but they can get there. Like I think Damian Pierce's upside is 150 yards, maybe 2 touchdowns on this slate.
I
ETN,
just made a beautiful, beautiful cash/tournament team.
yeah,
It doesn't have a receiver over 6K. It doesn't have a running back under 7.5. I got Mahomes in a stack. It's a pretty beautiful team, and I like the potential correlation that comes with it as well. It's not often I build a lineup on a Friday. That is what I go with on a Sunday. But
today's that day.
if things shake out the way we think they're going to, that might be the case. I talked about these cheap receivers. Let's rip it over to the receiver position. We got Kupp, Jefferson, Hill, Adams up top. That's kind of the big four this week. We got DeAndre Hopkins in a tough matchup, might be without his QB. I think Hopkins is going to play. Sorry, I think Murray's going to play, but he is listed as officially questionable. He only had 2 practices this week, and it's a hamstring. So you never know. They might hold him out. He could tweak it in pregame, but my guess is that he's going to play. And if he does, I like Hopkins in tournaments a ton because he's not going to get as much ownership. I think optimally speaking, though, this week, if I'm picking one of the top tier guys, it's Tyreek Hill. My most important mid-tier spend would be Amon-Ra St. Brown at 6'9". And then my favorite cheap option would be George Pickens at 5.6K. How about you?
Yeah, I love George Pickens today. Like he's going to be very popular. Well, very popular top play for me on Sunday. I probably have the same thing. Amon-Ra thing is in the extra spot as first mid to upper, and top. You said top 2. You say you like Hopkins. I'm more of going to be inclined to go with like Justin Jefferson or Devontae Adams.
I think Tyreek Hill is my priority. Tyreek Hill is like
It's your priority?
I think optimally Tyreek Hill is the first receiver I'd want to put into my lineup in a cash game, and then I also would prioritize like the 9K Tyreek Hill over the 9+K Derrick Henrys and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
just because like Hill's having one of the best fantasy receiver seasons of all time, and people don't really realize it. Like he's been absolutely phenomenal this year, and so Hill would be kind of my priority there. And then from a tournament standpoint, I love Adams, I like Jefferson, I like Kupp. The reason I wanted to highlight Hopkins a little bit is he's the one top tier receiver we're gonna get at like he'll be the only one that we can get at sub 10% ownership.
Yeah, but that offense is a mess. But also, I think we want to see who the quarterback is. I think Kyler will play though.
Yeah, you don't play him if Kyler doesn't play.
Yeah, and I think he will play. I think Kyler will play, but it's just how like even like we see this right here. Like the target wise, 5 targets. I get that Seattle played good defense, probably forced the ball elsewhere, which is completely fine. What you're supposed to do. But at that price, I want 20s. Like he had that against Minnesota. I don't know if he can. Do you think that's? I think the ceiling obviously is there anytime, but against the Rams,
I probably would. Like I'd be over the field on 8% if I was running 150 for sure. Like I'd be at least doubling that, but he would still fall behind in ownership to those other 4 guys above him for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And then I also paid $300 more personally. I like going with the guy like Justin Jefferson, just because I don't think no corner on that team is going to be able to stop him. Justin is in. I think he has a great matchup against the secondary who's been injury plagued this whole season in Buffalo, and he can go off and have a big game as long as the weather is right up there. I think we can see a nice game from Justin Jefferson.
I agree with you, and so I like all of these guys, but I'm kind of starting to notice in my bills that I just like the cheap receivers better than the cheap running backs.
Yeah,
and so like I think I could absolutely I think Tyreek will go for 20 plus. I think Kupp will go for 20 plus. I think Jefferson will go for 20 plus. But I could also see Amari Cooper, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Christian Kirk, George Pickens, Mac Hollins with no Darren Waller and no Hunter Renfrow. Like I think Mac Hollins is going to be my favorite receiver on the slate.
Oh, he's going to let me add him back to the. I keep forgetting to add him back, but he should be more popular than 5%.
100%. Like so that this is where my favorite range is basically like Ryan Tannehill is going to be back. So when I can just go George Pickens, Robert Woods, Mac Hollins, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones Jr., Marquez Valdez-Scantling, all these guys below 6K, especially when they're pairing with the quarterbacks I want to be playing. I got Mahomes receivers in there and Hardman and Scantling. I got Lawrence's receivers in there and Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, and a barely more expensive Christian Kirk. And so I got and Kadarius Toney is in that range too. So I got the receivers to pair with the QBs I want to play here. And then I also have a couple other guys in great spots like Mac Hollins, who will be great pivots off of chalkier plays like Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. And then a guy like Robert Woods, who he's been poor. Malik Willis has been in there at quarterback, and he hasn't been getting the targets. But Tannehill is going to be back for this one. And Robert Woods is the clear-cut number one receiver there at 5.6K. So I think there's a lot of interesting cheapies there. The last time Woods had Tannehill with a full game, he had 8 targets. I think there's a lot of interesting guys that are 6K and below, even 7K and below on this slate. And it's kind of making me interested in getting to them a little bit more than these expensive running backs. Expensive receivers, sorry.
And I get that. Now, do you think it's with all those cheap receivers, and now we have the options, like strategy-wise, to pay up, do you think it's more of a 3 running back week or more of a 4 wide receiver week? Like
it could be either, and I don't think I'd want to limit it overly that much. It would just be whatever fits into my stacks because there would be specific players I'd want to go out of my way and make sure they're the ones that I'm getting in my flex positions. And so if I was running 150, I'd probably make a lot of rules this week and make a lot of I wouldn't play Mecole Hardman and I guess Hardman's been getting a lot of rushing touchdowns lately, so maybe I would. But I wouldn't play Valdez-Scantling without Mahomes. I wouldn't play Juju Smith-Schuster without Mahomes. I wouldn't play Christian Kirk without Mahomes or Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Same with Marvin Jones, Kadarius Toney, guys like that. And by trying to make those rules, I would hope that I don't need my flex to be a certain position, but I don't want my flex to be Allen Lazard. You know what I mean? That's not what I want. I want my flex to be Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, or Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, Dameon Pierce. I want it to be one of the players that I have a lot of exposure to. Mm-hmm. And if I'm getting a random receiver as a flex, it better be when I have that quarterback and I'm playing 3 of his pass catchers.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that one.
Let's take it to the tight end position where we got Travis Kelce as the guy up top. He's going to be getting.
Real quick, I want to mention. I think Deontay Johnson is another good play. And we didn't mention Mooney as well. Those Chicago receivers. We don't know who's going to get what, but I think that they are definitely in play for sure, as well as Adam Thielen. As far as the cheaper side that you were talking about before too.
I think a very interesting way to run a tournament lineup is Justin Fields with Mooney, Claypool, and Kmet. Because a lot of people today or this weekend are going to go Fields is optimal, Fields is going to run. But then if you get a game like last week where he throws the ball 28 times and he has 3 passing touchdowns, all of a sudden, if you're playing his cheap receivers with him and they outperform the other cheap receivers and you got the expensive guys in your lineup to pair with him, that's a tournament winning type upside. So for me personally, I think I'm feeling 3 lineups this week. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be Mahomes, it's going to be Lawrence, and I don't know if the third is going to be Fields or Tua yet. But if it is Fields for me, then it's going to be with at least two of the Chicago pass catchers, hoping that that's my way of getting a little bit different than the people who are just kind of putting their cash game lineups in tournaments, having no stacks with him at all there. At the tight end, we got Kelsey up top. A lot of people are going to be pairing him with Mahomes. I think it's really interesting to pair him with Trevor Lawrence, but he's projecting for double every other tight end on the slate, not named Zach Ertz or surprisingly Foster Moreau, who is our third highest projected tight end on the slate now that Darren Waller is on the injured reserve. For me, Kelsey is the man by a mile. If I was playing 150, I'd have probably double that 20%. Like I'd try to get at least 40% Travis Kelsey. If Kyler Murray is out, I have no interest in Ertz. If he's in, I think I'd only play him in stacks. Guys like Dulcich, Schultz, Moreau, I'm okay with all of them, but not super fond on all of them. My primary targets outside of Travis Kelsey would be TJ Hawkinson at 6K, getting a ton of targets in his first game back, or going wildly cheap for somebody like a Kylan Granson, 4.4K, if specifically Mo Alley Cox doesn't play. Mo Alley Cox was in a walking boot earlier this week. He's logged some limited practices since. If he doesn't play, Granson is a guy who's had as many as 7 targets in a game this year. He's just wildly cheap. And if he doesn't have to split that time with Cox, who often gets the run in the red zone, then if Granson picks himself up 4 catches and a touchdown at that price, that could be huge. So for me, I'm looking to Kelsey first, Hawkinson second, and then it's probably going to be Foster Moreau or cheaper.
Kelsey is number one overall, like without a doubt. At 8.5K is an expensive price to pay from. If I'm playing him, he has to be in a stack. I can't play him by himself. I mean, you can play him by himself because we see him have 4 touchdowns on like 25 yards altogether and just bring a slate like that. But
you know, it'd be one of the most interesting ways that I think would be viable to like win a very large field tournament this week.
2 tight ends?
No, Mahomes, Valdez-Scantling, Hardman, Juju.
Oh gosh,
running it back with Travis Etienne and Evan Ingram.
That means
you get a full game stack that no one else will have.
That means you have to, like, for $5, I would do that. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that's like in a you build, if you're running 150, X out one of your Mahomes stacks and hand build that one in, because then if Jacksonville keeps it close, and with this one you're kind of looking at it as they maybe get ahead early with Travis Etienne, they score a touchdown or 2 with Evan Ingram. And then you get Mahomes throwing bombs instead of driving the ball down the field. 50-yard TD to Hardman, 50-yard TD to Valdez-Scantling. Juju Smith-Schuster has 8 targets for 6 catches and 100 yards, that type of thing.
Yeah, but
that's how you win a tournament.
But that game needs to go significantly over. Like, that needs to be like at 65, 70 points total.
I mean, that's any game for you to win a tournament, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. That's just... Whew, I mean, one line for $5, it doesn't hurt. I'm just gonna say that for sure. It doesn't hurt. I like Kelsey's a priority, 8.5K. I would definitely double that for sure. Like you said, TJ Hawkinson would be the next priority guy for me. And then I like Mike Gesicki a lot. Just because, as far as with the Miami stacks, I think he's someone I definitely want to prioritize and get to a lot of. Evan Ingram did not see a lot of targets, I think, the last game, but he's someone else, another guy I would like to get to as far as in the lower end range. And as you see, that's my cheapest tight end here in this position. I do like some of these other guys in the middle as far as Freiermuth, Schultz. Cole Kmet is going to be more of a priority because of my stack with Chicago and Foster Monroe. But I might make this a little bit smaller than what I'm expecting it to have it at. Zach,
what do you think about somebody like Harrison Bryant with David Njoku out?
I thought about that briefly and quickly. I don't know. I gotta dig into that because he just got ruled out today, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
So I gotta look more into the stats and see how many targets like Njoku was getting in general. Well, Harrison Bryant has been there before.
Joku was out last
Yeah, he
week
was out
too, and
last week.
Bryant had 0 targets.
They would say Bryant was there before and wasn't doing that much. So
Yeah.
he's an option definitely, but
He'd be in the 150 pool, but not a target.
yeah, he's not high priority. I really get to all these guys that we talked about here: Robert Tonyan, Evan Ingram, Gasecki, Monroe, Komet. Komet's an iffy one because he doesn't get targeted a lot, and he hasn't. But last week he just decided to go off and score 2 touchdowns and have a good game. So, but that's what I think this tight end position has been all year. So it's pretty much like a shot in the dark, unless you got Kelsey or you have Mark Andrews on in your player pool or playing that week. You're gonna be it's gonna be like a lottery, pretty much essentially in a way with this position. So I think these guys are perfect to have in a player pool and then just see what happens because any one of these guys can go off and have a good game.
Speaking of positions where you need to hit the lottery, I think this is going to be one of the quickest times we can ever spend on talking about the defense position because if Josh Allen is out, which we think he's going to be, $3,200 Minnesota Vikings, that is your cash game, that is your tournament play. I would probably make a rule with if Josh Allen is confirmed out based on that price, running 150. I would have Devin Singletary or the Minnesota Vikings defense in every single lineup.
Yeah.
Like I'm either saving salary with that D or I'm saving salary with Singletary. And it's easy as that. One of them is going to do very well. I think the Steelers and the Saints are both kind of fine in tournaments. I think even a team like Detroit Lions would be somewhat interesting in tournaments. We saw them have a better defensive game last week, and we're going to get some Justin Fields chalk. But it's like you play the Rams if Kyler's out. You play Minnesota if Josh Allen's out. And then there are some teams like the Chiefs, the Titans, the Bills, the Cowboys that I think make for some very interesting tournament options.
I like that call with the Minnesota. That's a fantastic call. I like this. Like we're both Saints fans here, but what was it? TJ Watt, he's coming back.
Is Watt if Watt's back this week? Yeah, Steelers defense is
great. He's back this week. No snap count or anything.
Then yeah,
I like Pittsburgh a lot. If Andy Dalton's that quarterback, I like Pittsburgh a lot. And not trying to shame my team but I don't even know why we're playing Andy Dalton at quarterback. First of all, that's just a whole nother subject. But TJ Watt is one of the best pass rushers in the league, the best pass rusher probably in the league. And we seen what he did when he was just with that Pittsburgh team before he got hurt. Just that one game, just dominating, causing mass chaos. So I like Pittsburgh a lot. I think they're definitely a top target of mine. Something I definitely want to get like triple the field on, just for the sack purposes of sacks and cause them to speed up to throw the ball for Andy Dalton, especially at quarterback. Saints defense is a good one too as well. I think I'm not going to be spending up on defense today.
I was just thinking, like I like the idea of the Cowboys or the Bills or the Titans in a large field thing, but like I don't think there's a need to go above the Saints this week when we need salary savings. Like we're in need of salary this week. It's a great week to punt defense. It's the Vikings, it's the Steelers as the top two, and then I think you can take other shots on like I don't mind the shot on the Texans, the Lions, or the Saints in tournaments.
Yeah, like Dallas 5K is expensive. We like Aaron Rodgers has not played well this year. I understand that, but he's turned the ball over, but not turned the ball over like at a crazy rate, at a high rate. So how you need them to have a touchdown, if not two, to be like optimal, probably. Because I think you're going to get that from like a team like Pittsburgh, possibly, or even the Vikings if Josh Allen doesn't go. Even though Case Keenum is not a bad quarterback, but yeah, and also wanted to also talk about just being safe with this too. I like keeping an idea, like you said, Detroit in there. I like also keeping Chicago in the pool because these are divisional games, and divisional games go one of two ways. They're either going to be a high scoring game, or it's going to be close and not that high scoring, go under. So you have to decide which one do you believe is going to happen, or play for that scenario, especially if you're running 150. These divisional games, the teams know each other pretty well. Coaches know their staff. Coaches know the staff very, very well, unless the teams are completely superior. But typically, these games will always be a close, nail-biting game and down to the wire. So, is this more so going to be high scoring or less? You have to just decide that.
Yep, I'm with you 100%. That'll do it for this episode of FanDuel Friday for the NFL. We got our NBA video posted as well, so you can check that on YouTube. Check that out on the RotoGrinders page. Comment who you think is the best point per dollar play in the Milwaukee Bucks game, and if you get that, say how many points you think this is going to win as well. You can DM Dre or I, and you can win a free week of RG Premium. For NFL this week, let's pick the top stack. The highest scoring stack this week. Pick who it is and how many touchdowns you think the QB is going to throw, and we'll pick another winner for our one free week of RG Premium. We thank FanDuel for sponsoring the show. We thank the RG guys for putting us on. Hit the like button so we can keep making this happen. We will answer your questions in the comments. Dre, do you got anything before we get out of here?
No, just make sure, like I said before in the last video, if as soon as you put it there, DM us to let us know that it's there, or if not, email us, DM us the pics so that way we know on Twitter or even Instagram, whatever it may be. Our Twitters are right there below next to our names, and we'll definitely make sure we get you that free week if you are lucky enough to win.
Basically, what it all comes down to is chat with us, hang out, ask us some questions, give us your takes, and then we'll be giving away some free weeks of RG Premium as well. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. We hope to see you at the top of the leaderboards, and we will see you next Friday. Peace.